Commandment, says the Lord, love one another as I love you. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. John. When Judas had left them, Jesus said, "Now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and God will glorify him at once. My children, I will be with you only a little while longer. I give you a new commandment: love one another. As I have loved you, so also you should love one another. This is how all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." The Gospel of the Lord. On Holy Thursday, during the Last Supper, Jesus gave his disciples and those who will believe in him a new commandment. And that commandment is love one another. And Jesus also said, "As I have loved you, so you must also love one another." And that the world will recognize that we are his disciples when we have love for each other. This is very powerful. Jesus is saying that people will know that we are his disciples, not simply because we come to church regularly, even though it is good to come to church. The world will recognize that we are his disciples, not simply because we have the appearance of being religious. Rather, the world will know that we are his disciples. We belong to him when we love one another. Brothers and sisters, oftentimes when we hear about love, many of us will think about their spouses, their children, their friends, their colleagues, their wonderful neighbors. And they think these are the people that we are called to love, the people that we find it easy to love, and people who love us back. We love them and they love us back. We easily get along with them, and that these are the ones that Jesus is talking about. You know, in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus said, if you love only your friends, if you love only those who love you back, what is the big deal? Even gangsters love themselves. Even criminals love themselves. Even people who make terrorists, do you think they don't love themselves? They do. And so love should go beyond loving our spouses, our children, our friends, our siblings, our neighbors, our church folks, and people we easily get along. Actually, the true test of love is when we are able to love the ones that are very difficult to love. When we find it, when we move closer to loving those that we ordinarily wouldn't want to deal with. And so today, I want to preach about the 5 different ways we can love those that are difficult to love. Because everyone here knows what love is about. So I'm not going to talk about that. During the week, I was struggling between preaching on this or maybe preaching on why it is difficult to love. Maybe someday I will preach on that. Why is it difficult to love? But I decided to settle on this. How we can love people that are difficult to love. Number 1, everyone should know this. Pray for them often. Jesus says, pray, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Why do you think Jesus gave us this command? Jesus understands that it is virtually impossible for you to continue to hate someone that you are praying for every day. If you hate me and if you pray for me every morning when you go down on your knees, you're asking God to bless me, asking God to touch me, asking God to move into my life, asking God to attend to my needs, I bet you it will be almost impossible to continue to hate that individual. And so, if there is anyone in your life that you really, really, really hate, or the Spirit of the Lord has even ministered to you, has spoken to you to love that individual. You have been to church and you have heard about loving others, but you still find it very difficult to love. Or maybe you want to love them, but you are struggling to love them. The first thing you need to begin to do tonight is to begin to pray for them. When you pray, mention that person by name. Lord, you know how I feel about this man. You know how I feel about this woman. You know how I feel about that my colleague at work. You know how crazy she drives me. But Lord, I pray for her. Please, bless her. Protect her. Watch over her family. Keep her from harm's way. Brothers and sisters, if we continue to pray for that person you don't like, a time will come, the Spirit of the Lord, because God is at work here, you will begin to have a feeling of affection for them. That's the first thing that we need to, because when we hate someone, we want them gone. Some will even want them to die. Some will want them disappear. Some will wish something bad to happen to them. We pray that some misfortune will come upon them. But Jesus said, love your enemies and pray for those folks that make life uncomfortable. Because by praying for them, your heart is drawn to theirs. And you begin to have some kind of compassion for them. Because it is impossible, virtually impossible, to continue to hate someone that you are praying for every day. You are asking God to move into that individual's life, while at the same time you want to move away. That's very, very difficult. So that's the first thing that we need to do, to pray for them often. Number 2, humble yourself. When we say that no one is perfect, that includes you and me. So when we say that no one is perfect, you include yourself, but you exclude the enemy. So because no one is perfect means that from time to time, we are going to step on each other's toes. From time to time, we are going to misunderstand each other. From time to time, we are going to react in a way that will offend someone else. Because we are not perfect, from time to time, we are going to say mean stuff that will offend the other person. And that is not just you, but also the other person. And so, if we begin to humble ourselves and realize that, you know what? I have been guilty of what that individual had done to me in some other ways. That will begin to put us closer to that individual. Because the problem here is that we acknowledge that I will acknowledge that I'm not perfect. I will not always get it right. But I will expect everyone else to be perfect and to get it right. And when I offend people, I will expect them to forgive. But when they offend me, I hold on to that. So the next thing that we need to do is to apply the virtue of humility here. I am not perfect. She's not perfect. I am not perfect. He is not perfect. I have hurt people before. He has hurt people before. The same way Jude has hurt me or Sarah has hurt me, I have also hurt someone else. And that means I have to be humble about it and realize that we're all in this together. Number 3, forgiveness. Forgiveness is just a word, but it is also a feeling. It is a virtue, but it's a virtue that moves us closer to people. When we fail to forgive people, we become angry towards them and we become bitter. And brothers and sisters, it is impossible to love someone that we are deeply angry with and bitter about. And so the first step to loving someone is to first and foremost deal with the anger, deal with the bitterness, deal with the resentment. You have heard me here say time and time again that resentment is like drinking a glass of poison and expecting that it kills someone else. You are the one drinking the poison, but you are expecting that as you drink the poison, it will kill the person you are angry with. It isn't going to kill that person. The one who is drinking the poison is the one who's going to be hurt. This past week, I got an alert on my phone. Those of you who go to Google and search for things, you can also search for this. Because right now, everyone has concluded, most experts know that sorrow or grief can harm people's life in a way that they never believed. So the recent research is anger. And that anger can actually make people live shorter lives. That it has more catastrophic effect on us than previously known. And so when you don't deal with that anger in your heart, when you don't deal with that bitterness, when you don't deal with that resentment, brothers and sisters, you will not be able to love. And guess what? You will be undermining your own health. And when I talk about health now, I'm talking about health in a holistic sense. Physical, emotional, and spiritual. And so today, I hope that as we are listening to me, that you begin to realize that, you know what, it doesn't worth it. I am not saying that you should not acknowledge your pain. I am not saying that you should not acknowledge the hurt. I am not saying that you should not acknowledge the harm that was done to you. Acknowledge them. But don't live the rest of your life in anger. Cry, lament, and then seek for help. If you're not able to get that anger out of you, look for someone to counsel you. You need counseling. If you're not able to remove that bitterness from you, that resentment, then you need help. But you cannot and you shouldn't live the rest of your life in anger and bitterness and resentment. It's like living in darkness for the rest of your life. God doesn't want you to live in that place. And you shouldn't live in that place. The gospel of Jesus is a gospel of joy. It's a gospel of love. It's a gospel of light. Jesus says, you are the light of the world. And how can you be the light of the world when everything around you is all about darkness? You have to become light so that when people encounter you, they will encounter light. When people encounter you, they will encounter joy. When people encounter you, they will encounter that peace in your life. And so please, don't go on with that hatred. Deal with it. Look for someone to help you out. Look up, fall on your knees and look up to heavens and say, Lord, I do not want to live in this anger anymore. Heal me. And find a way to deal with whatever that has caused that anger. And once you have dealt with those anger and bitterness, then it will be easier for you to love that person. Number 4, try and know people's stories. In the place where you work, if you realize that whenever you mention church, there is someone here who is quick to jump at you and attack you, it will make sense to try and know that person's story. Before you think that that person hates you, that person doesn't like you, or that person is antichrist, or that person is the devil incarnate, it will be important to know their stories. One of the things that I learned when I was studying clinical pastoral education in PIH is that the moment I know a patient's story, right there I am moved to connect with that individual. Because you can't really minister to people unless you know their story. When you know the person's story, you will realize that the reason why that individual all easily jumps at you whenever you talk about God and church, that it may not have something to do with you. It may be that this person is upset with God, or the person is upset with church for an experience that happened many years ago that person is yet to resolve. Knowing people's story, this is what life has taught me. This is what studies have taught me, is that knowing people's stories always triggers the virtue of compassion for them. Because the moment I know their story, I begin to feel for them. I'm no longer, trapped by judging them. Why is he so mean? Why is she so mean? Why can't she talk to me? Right there, I begin to realize why they feel this way they feel. And virtue of compassion will be triggered that I want to hug the person. I want to sit down and hear every story. I want to see how I will be able to help this person. But we easily blame and judge because we don't pay attention. We are not interested in people's story. Everyone is not going to be like you. There are people that any bad thing that happens to them, they easily push it aside and keep moving. They don't live in the past. But everyone is not like that. There are people, even though they are living the present, but their present is actually their past. Until we make time to hear their stories, we may find it very difficult to love them. Number 5, not everyone will be your best friend. Oftentimes we want everyone to be our best friend. Isn't going to be possible. During the ministry of Jesus, Jesus healed so many people. You will read from the scripture that great crowds were following him. A lot of people were following Jesus. But guess what? Jesus was always hanging out with only 12. Those 12 were his best friends. Those 12. He loves everyone. And you can see this through his ministry, through his signs and wonders, through miracles and availability and everything that Jesus did. Everything that he did, you can see him pouring out his entire life for it. But at the end of the day, when Jesus retires, he retires with his disciples, with just those 12. So you can love everyone without making everyone your best friend. The problem is, if you go around, if you want everyone to be your best friend, maybe you work in an office and there are about 8 people there. Not everyone there is going to be your best friend. What the Lord has called us to do is to love them, meaning treat them with respect, be nice to them. When they fall, give them a lending hand. Continue to shower them love. Continue to give them the impression that you care and that you genuinely love. They may not want to be your best friend. Don't go about forcing them to become your best friend, because not everyone will be your best friend. Brothers and sisters, I'm sure there are so many other ways that we can apply to help, that will help us deal with difficult people who are very difficult to love. But I believe that with these 5, if we begin to apply them, this will move us closer to Jesus' command to love one another. Pray for them. That's the one I have asked you to begin to do today. That person that whenever you remember him, you are cursing, even cursing in your mind. Asking God to deal with them. Asking God to cast all kinds of spell on them. Today Jesus says, love one another. Everyone. And that includes those who have hated you. That includes those who have caused you pain. That includes those who have hurt you so much. That includes those who have lied about you. That includes those who have wrecked your marriage, those who have wrecked your relationship, those who have cost you your health, those who have cost you your job. That means those who have even made life miserable. Jesus says, love everyone. And do you know one thing that is very interesting about Jesus? Everything that Jesus asked us to do, he did himself. Remember what happened when Jesus was hanging on the cross? The people who crucified him, they were making mockery of him. Some were teasing him. Some were mocking his God. Some were feeding him with expired wine, making mockery of his own reliance on God, on his Father, challenging him to show himself the Messiah. And they were there having fun at the hurt of someone else. From the cross, Jesus looked down and saw them. By this time, Jesus was at the peak of his pain. Jesus was at the peak of his hurt. This was Jesus about to die. And the people who caused him that amount of pain were there making mockery of him. You and I, with the powers that Jesus had, will retaliate. But what did Jesus do? He prayed for them. Isn't that what I was asking you to do? Jesus said, Father, forgive them, because they do not know what they are doing. You and I are being asked today to do the same. The one who prayed for those who crucified him is asking us, also forgive. No bad experience we will have in this world will be compared to what Jesus went through on the cross. And yet, Jesus, who was considered weak, was able to find big strength from him and forgave. And today he is asking us to do the same. Why do you think Jesus forgave those people? Why do you think Jesus? Have you ever asked yourself, why did he forgive? Because of love. He loved them. The same way he loved you. Before many of you found Jesus, the Lord has loved you. Before you gave your life to Christ, he had loved you. Before you became a churchgoer, he had loved you. Before you took your faith seriously, Jesus had loved you. Before you start praying and say, you know what, I'm going to get close to God, he had loved you. And the same way he's saying to us, love those who have hurt us, especially those ones that we find very difficult to love. And guess what? Let me tell you the good news. The moment you begin to love the ones who are very difficult to love, that's when you become more like Jesus Christ, who himself loved the ones who put him up on the cross. I pray that God will give us the grace, you and I, to do what he has asked us to do today. Amen.